What's up, YouTube? I'm Trent Wel-Don and welcome back to the channel Well-Done Tanks. Tonight we are getting into a discussion on setting up a quarantine tank and why I think every hobbyist should do this. So now that I am officially moved to Texas, we are starting work on what I'm calling the fish ranch. It's my new fish room, but it's a fun play on Texas terminology of we're in kind of a ranching area. But now that I am looking to purchase some expensive fish, to be honest, but even any fish you're looking to purchase. So the best way to say that is, now that I'm looking to purchase a large quantity of fish, a disease outbreak in a fish room can be disastrous. A disease outbreak in one tank can mean the end of a hobby for an individual. And that's something that can be avoided with a simple quarantine tank system. Now, this can be done with a Rubbermaid tote. This can be done with a glass box we like to call aquariums. Now tonight we will be unboxing a 10-gallon starter kit from PetSmart, their top fin brand, just to show you what is my recommendation and the equipment needed for a quarantine system. It's fairly simple, it's really easy. Like I said, this can be done in any glass box tank. This can be done in totes. I prefer a 10-gallon system because most medications on the market, like those you can purchase from the Aquarium Co-op, the medications by Fritz, Maricin, General Cure, all of those, ICX, they all have recommendations, typically dosing up to 10 gallons, which if you have a larger system than 10 gallons, you just do your math and add on each one. So a 10-gallon quarantine system makes it really easy to follow dosing instructions, and that's why I purchased a top fin 10-gallon starter kit that also came with other equipment that I would highly recommend for a quarantine tank. Now when we unbox that here just shortly, I will go over the equipment needed and what I recommend for that, but I want to quickly get into this on the introductory standpoint of why you need a quarantine tank and how it can actually save your hobby. So when you purchase new fish from a local fish store, a chain store, a friend, well, Facebook doesn't allow it anymore, wherever you purchase fish from, you run the risk of bringing in a new disease from that fish into your own system. So for example, let's say you have a community tank, right? You have 10 fish in the aquarium, you're looking to add another 2 fish. If you bring 2 new fish in there and they are already sick, that can transfer to your other fish in your aquarium and cause a lot bigger problem than what it could have been. Where if you have a quarantine system, you put those 2 new fish into that tank, you observe them for an extended period of time, you medicate if you choose to, you preemptively medicate, you medicate if you see disease, whatever it's going to be. Think of it as just, it's a quarantine system. It's a chance for you to observe new fish before you put them into an existing system. And it allows a peace of mind for a lot of people. Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, my local fish store says they quarantine their fish. Okay, they may, but I still highly recommend that you do your own quarantine because now you know how long you've quarantined these fish, or you know how long they've been in your possession. You've been keeping an eye on them. You've been looking out for diseases and these different things. So it gives you power of knowledge of what fish you're bringing into your system. Now, I like to quarantine before I bring fish into a new fish room because things can transfer through equipment use, water droplets. So it's a much safer practice to quarantine, and it's relatively easy. It is very cheap to do. It's very easy to do. Now, like I say, the kit I purchased tonight was $60 on sale. You can do this for cheaper, and a lot of you already have the equipment necessary to do this. So let's go over and unbox this tank and run you through setting up a very simple quarantine system that I believe will help you have much better success in your fish keeping hobby. So to teach you about a quarantine system and a quarantine tank, I picked up a top fin 10-gallon starter kit from PetSmart. Now, reminder, you can use whatever you want as your quarantine system, realistically, as long as it holds water and you feel comfortable keeping fish in it. You can put a filter on most things But for this one, I wanted to use this as an opportunity to teach you some bare necessities of what go into a quarantine tank, so you have a full understanding of what you're going to need. There are extra things in this kit, and we'll go into why I chose this kit, and then you can address what you want to do for your quarantine system. But this cost me $60 on sale at PetSmart, here my local PetSmart. And the reason I purchased it for the $60, like I said, it comes with everything we need to get this up and running. But then you can like mix and match what you want to use. If you used a tote, a bucket, whatever you want to do. But I like the 10-gallon size because most medications come in a 10-gallon dose of the water column, that water volume. So things like, oh man, I got everything shoved in here. Okay, what can I get out first? Oh, it's all glued down. So first things first, it comes with a heater. Now this is the top fin 50-watt heater. We can all have opinions on what heater is best. Now the reason I am going to recommend a heater is depending on where you live and depending on what room you have your fish in, you may need to regulate the temperature. I would suggest doing some temperature checking with a small digital thermometer, an infrared thermometer, something to let you know a baseline. For example, if you're in a room and the room stays about 72 degrees, check the temperature of your water. If that water temperature is roughly around that, you may need to consider a heater. If your tank in the room it's in is staying at a solid 75, I think you'd be all right with that one. But now if you're going to be quarantining certain fish like German blue rams or something that does require a hotter temperature, you may need to consider a heater. So for this, a top fin 50-watt heater for this 10-gallon system, I'm glad it came with it. Next is a filter. So this is obviously the top fin hang on the back filter, what do they call this thing? The Silent Stream Power Filter 10. Any filter will literally do. It can be a hang on the back filter like this one, it can be a sponge filter, it can be a canister filter. I prefer sponge filters over hang on the back filters, just less moving parts, less things to break, and it's much easier to set up. Now saying that though, because this came with this filter, I will be using this filter to make sure I have a colonized bacteria for the tank. But then I am firmly against using the filter cartridges, the refill cartridges that come with these. I think it's the biggest scam of the hobby, and we'll get into that why in a separate video. So my recommendation is if you're going to be using a power filter, like a hang on the back, is ditch the cartridges it comes with and get yourself something, a sponge, right? This is what the Fluval Biofoam Max. It was cheap, it was $5 at PetSmart. And what this is 2 blocks of sponge that I can cut up and fit into the power filter, so it turns it basically into a sponge filter. This will hold more beneficial bacteria than the cartridge system will. And I say on a separate video, I'm going to talk about why you actually damage your ecosystem when you replace cartridges versus just using a sponge that you buy once for $5 and never have to replace. So that's my recommendation. We're going to fill this power filter full of this sponge just to make sure that we can colonize our bacteria. And realistically, out of this kit, other than the tank, that's all we need. Like, it comes with a net in here. It comes with a water test vial, which some of you may need a net, right? Oh, and a thermometer. It does come with a thermometer. I guess we'll use that because it came with it, but not too worried about it. But yeah, some of you may need a net, and if you trust your PetSmart to bring them water, feel free to do so. Now the other main portion of this kit that I did like, and this is absolutely not necessary to run a successful quarantine, is this comes with an LED light connected into the lid. Now, if you've ever dealt with any kind of these systems, you'll know that comes with like the little plastic lid with the lights taped up into it. Now, here's my reasoning for using this. I like that I'm going to have a light to see the fish. Again, not necessary at all. I've done so many quarantines without a light, and it's not going to change anything of the quarantine. It just allows me to see better what's going on with the fish, so I can, hopefully catch things coming up first. The other reason, though, is it acts as the lid. Now, this is going to prevent fish from jumping out of the tank. This is going to keep humidity down. This is going to keep moisture content down. This is going to help retain heat in the aquarium. So instead of having to makeshift a lid, having this solid lid that can fit right on here, and then it has the cutout for the power filter and everything, is a bonus to me of why I purchased this. So a quick rundown. Again, the number one things you're going to need: your tank, a container. This is a 10-gallon tank. I like it because now I can dose straight 10 gallons of medication, whatever I want to. Use a tote to whatever's going to hold water. From there, you will need a filter. Now, because this filter is brand new, there's no colonizing bacteria on it, I will teach you a way to jumpstart this tank and actually go through setting up this tank with you so you have that understanding. So hang in the back filter, sponge filter, whatever filter you want to use. And then depending on your situation, a heater. Now again, like I said, check the temperature of your tank at room temperature. What species are you quarantining? All things are going to be considerations for purchasing a heater if need be. So now that we have shown you all the equipment, let's go ahead and put this thing together and get this tank set up and talk about why we're going to set up the way we are. So here is the overall setup. I know it's a little dark in here. This is actually underneath in a stand of another aquarium I will be using in my studio. But what that allows me to do is it kind of keeps it out of sight but not out of mind. And that's where you're going to have to decide where you want to place your quarantine tank. For me, it fits underneath here. I can still put my canister filter for this other tank, have it running, close the door, forget it's there. And I say, this is meant to be a quarantine tank. This is not meant to be a full display tank. So I'm going to be leaving this tank bare bottom. Now, I say, that will be how the tank is 98% of the time unless I'm feeding the fish, working with the fish, is without any plants in here, fish don't really need the light. So I'm not too worried about that. But I say, we have the power filter installed back here with the foam installed in the back of it now. So we have that there. And then we also have, the heater installed in here, which is, that'll even focus. So the heater's installed, and that's going, there we go. Heater's installed, which is going to allow us to regulate our temperature. The lid is on, and it's also one reason why, because it's in this stand, I wanted a lid on this to try and keep humidity down in the tank. Now, because this is going to be a bare bottom system, we are truly relying on the sponge back in the filter to house as much beneficial bacteria as we possibly can. Now, a trick to this, though, is we are going to be getting some gravel from my buddy that has numerous tanks running. He has a tank that's been running for years. We're going to take a handful of that gravel and drop it into this tank, which is going to bring over an enormous amount of bacteria, and then also give another place for the bacteria to colonize, completing this quarantine tank system. So you can do this with a tote, you can do this with a tank. I like the 10-gallon tanks just for ease of dosing medications, but something that you can see your fish in and visually watch them is the proper way to set up a quarantine tank. So there's my full take on a quarantine system and how simple and easy it is to set up a quarantine system, allowing you better success in this hobby. Something that cost me $60, but something that I could do for probably $10 if I'm gonna say $15. If you really think about it, if you buy a Rubbermaid tote, a USB nano air pump, and a sponge filter for all from Aquarium Co-op, well, they don't sell the tote, but even if you went Walmart, Amazon, you could purchase an air pump from Petco, PetSmart. I think for $15, you could put together a quarantine system using other pieces of equipment. Let's say sponge filter, air pump, heater, good to go. Now, check around and see what other equipment you may not be using currently, because you may have an extra tank, an extra filter, an extra heater that you can put all together and make your own quarantine system and have success with it. It does not need to be a fancy setup. I only purchased a new setup to make a point and show all the equipment that I wanted to use on my quarantine system, but you can do it for much cheaper. Now, something as simple, I say simple as a tote, can literally save you hundreds of dollars in the fish that you purchase, but it also gives you a peace of mind. It goes way beyond money, and it also comes down into the life and the value of your fish, of your aquatic life, right? So it's a better thing to do, and I highly recommend it. You're gonna talk to a lot of people that say, I don't quarantine, and I have fish in my tank every other week. And that's a gamble they take, because sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I like to err on the side of caution of knowing it's going to work by using a quarantine system. Now, the time frame of which you choose to quarantine really comes down to a personal preference. I like to do a minimum of 2 weeks, which I feel is a decent amount of time to see if anything does pop up within, of the fish, a diseased kind of thing. Now, if I'm adding it into a very established system, building out a very specific set of fish on a tank, I may go up to 6 months just to truly make sure that the fish in quarantine are healthy, they're eating, they're fat. Then when I transfer them over, I know I'm starting with the best opportunity I have. Now, that's another really good point I want to make, is most time we quarantine on a preventative measure of what if the fish is sick. What we don't always think about is that gives the fish a chance to actually settle into a new environment where they can eat. They don't have to compete for things. So now you introduce a fat, healthy fish into your ecosystem to allow it to have the best success it can. So please leave me a comment down below on your opinions of quarantine tanks. Do you use a quarantine tank? What is your quarantine tank setup if you do use one? And are you the one that gambles that you say your fish are quarantined so you don't? I always like hearing your guys' opinions and your knowledge and experience. So if you enjoyed this, hit the thumbs up button, hit the subscribe button, and we will definitely talk to you guys in the next one.